What challenges do food manufacturers face in sourcing ingredients? Can we order small pack sizes and quantities? How to be innovative and limit the R&D costs at the same time? Do we have competitive prices for ingredients? Are we covering demand, costs, and resolving supply issues? Listen to our food ingredients experts discuss the biggest questions facing buying food ingredients today. Welcome to Want to Taste Talks Food Ingredients.
Welcome to another episode of Want to Taste Talks Food Ingredients, where we delve into the latest trends and challenges in the world of food ingredients. I'm your host, Andrada Spatario, and today we're confronting the cocoa crisis, where unprecedented prices have caused major challenges for food manufacturers since the beginning of this year. This situation raises several questions. How can we manage costs without compromising on product quality? What alternatives are available that will retain our loyal customers? And how do these changes impact consumer perceptions and regulatory compliance? In this episode, we explore a promising solution, CocoaNex, a carob-based cocoa extender provided by Nexxus Foods. This innovative ingredient offers cost advantages while maintaining the qualities that consumers expect. I'll be speaking with Marc-Alexandre Chevrier, Business Development Manager at Nexxus Foods, and Julie Neron, their R&D Director, to uncover the benefits and best practices for using CocoaNex. So let's dive in and discover how CocoaNex can bring value to your business amidst the cocoa crisis.
Thanks for joining us for a discussion and a great webinar regarding our innovative cocoa enhancer and extender CocoaNex. My name is Marc-Alexandre Chevrier, and I'm a business development manager for Nexxus Foods, a business partner of One Two Taste. Before jumping into the subject of CocoaNex, I'm just going to give you guys a quick summary of who we are. So we are a custom solutions provider as well as a supplier of specialty ingredients. So we develop functional solutions and really have a strong focus on having both ingredients and blends that are allergen-free, gluten-free, as well as GMO-free. So we are primarily based in North America, but we do have our business partner, One Two Taste, who is an extension of Nexxus Foods for our solutions in the European market, as well as eastwards. Now, this being said, we're here today to speak about CocoaNex. To understand CocoaNex, first and foremost, we really need to understand the state of the cocoa market, as CocoaNex really helps in aiding with some of the challenges that are currently being felt by the cocoa market. Two of the main challenges currently are really linked to pricing and availability. In the past 12 months, we've seen the price of cocoa skyrocket, really reach unprecedented heights at over $12,000 USD per metric ton. Even in the medium term, what experts are really forecasting is that the price will remain high, not really coming down below the $6,000 USD per metric ton mark. So even at this price point, it's ballpark double the price of what our CocoaNex solution is. So when we're talking about pricing and availability of cocoa, what's happening is that this is really stemming from supply and demand. So supply and demand imbalances. We're seeing a lot of pressure being put on demand from leading chocolate companies, which is really fueled by the fact that the economy is reopening. We're also seeing a lot of demand that is coming from Asian countries, from the growing middle class there, such as in China and Indonesia. And in contrast, we are running into supply issues. So when we're looking at West Africa, which produces the majority of the world's cocoa, it's been impacted by weather system and been attacked by disease on the crops, such as the fungal black pod disease, which unfortunately really did attack the crops and impacted negatively the yield. So when you're thinking that West Africa produces close to 80% of the world's cocoa and they get hit by disease, well, unfortunately, this does have an upwards pressure on the pricing of cocoa. And all this is not to mention some of the geopolitical tensions that are very present, as a lot of the crops are still cultivated by some small holder farmers, a lot of whom are really having having trouble making ends meet, making less than $1 a day. So that means that they have really not a lot of money to reinvest in their crops, which translates unfortunately to lower and lower yields over time. So they do request help from the government, but the reality is that very little help is received. Now, this being the case with the cocoa industry, well, we do have a solution, which is CocoaNex. So CocoaNex is a superior cocoa substitute. It's primarily a carob-based blend, which really works well in synergy with cocoa powder. When we're looking at a functionality standpoint, this blend really has been developed by our R&D team in-house with the objective to really enhance enhance cocoa, all while really minimizing impact on taste, color, as well as texture. What's really important to mention as well is that it is free of GMO, gluten, as well as oxalate, theobromine, and caffeine, and actually has 2.5 times the level of calcium that cocoa beans has. For applications, CocoaNex can be used pretty much in the same type of applications as cocoa powder. So we're talking here anything ranging from sprinkles to cereal-based products to mousses to yogurts. And what we recommend is really to start at a range that is low, so anywhere between 10 to 15% versus cocoa powder, and really work your way upwards up to 50% until you really reach that optimal taste profile that you're looking for. We've actually gotten feedback from some of our customers that it actually works even well at a higher rate, again, depending on the application. This customer specifically was working on a sugar-based sprinkle and actually used 100% dosage rate versus cocoa powder and yielded some really good results. We're seeing a lot of interest coming from confectionery, bakery, sports nutrition industries for lots of different applications. Currently, we have lots of customers that are testing for ice cream, for cookies, for chocolate compounds, for fillings, as well as protein shakes. So again, many industries, many companies are currently looking into lowering their dependency on cocoa and really finding a helpful hand with CocoaNex. We've mentioned that price and availability of cocoa are two of the main drivers to leverage the CocoaNex solutions for the applications that we use cocoa powder. There are other reasons as well that are very important to mention, such as the sustainability of carob trees. So again, when we're looking at CocoaNex, one of the primary ingredients is carob. And when we take a look at cocoa trees, well, cocoa trees actually require nearly 20 liters of water per day per tree versus a carob tree that only takes 0.02 liters per day per tree. As well, this is not to mention that when we're looking at cocoa trees, they require lots of fertilizer and need to grow in a tropical climate. Not the case with carob trees, which can grow in a much more versatile way, are adapted to grow through droughts, and can grow in semi-arid climates as well. And as well, what's important to mention is that Nexxus Food guarantees no child labor on CocoaNex. When we're looking at the cocoa industry, again, even though there are different alliances and associations, it is still estimated that today in West Africa alone, there are over 2 million children that are still working the fields. Again, not the case with our CocoaNex blend. And as well, from a heavy metal standpoint, there is a quasi-absent and exponentially lower level of heavy metals in our CocoaNex blend versus cocoa. Just to give you an example, when we're looking at cadmium, which is a heavy metal, cadmium tests consistently at a dose of 0.6 milligrams per kg in cocoa versus 0.01 milligrams per kg in our CocoaNex blend. So again, exponentially lower. So these are just really some points that are very important to mention, aside from the price and availability issue with cocoa, which CocoaNex is addressing. Now, this being said, I'm going to pass it back to Andrada for a Q&A.
Thank you, Mark, for offering us this overview on CocoaNex. Now, I'll be taking off my marketing hat and putting on an R&D hat to be able to ask Julie, the R&D director, some questions. Julie, could you please introduce yourself very quickly?
Yes, I'm the director of R&D and quality assurance at Nexxus Food for now close to 9 years. So I worked on the development of the CocoaNex.
Okay, so definitely asking the right person here. Let's start with what do you see as the biggest benefit and the biggest challenge when using CocoaNex?
Okay, the biggest benefit for sure is the cost saving. So I would say this is the biggest. But if I have to choose two other, heavy metal reduction is a very good one as well, and the synergy with cocoanex powder to enhance the flavor of your finished product. On the challenge, the biggest one will be to set in your finished recipe the ratio of replacement. So to define if it will be a 10 to 50% replacement.
Okay, so considering you mentioned the cost benefits, I would like to hear a bit if you have some examples of cost savings by using CocoaNex based on cost in use. Is there a calculation model available?
A clear calculation model, I would say it's all, but because each of the project will have a different ratio, but definitely you can go like depending on the ratio you will be using. Let's say you cut by 50% the cocoa powder you have in your recipe, and the cost is 50 less than the cocoa powder. Definitely, you would have, or you could expect a 25% reduction on your finished product, roughly.
Okay, so this is the cost savings example. I'm curious now, are there any examples for the other benefits that you mentioned, and that is with the heavy metals and with the ingredient synergy?
I can bring that reduction on heavy metal. Nexus being a solution provider, there was a client that had a major issue with heavy metal content. It was doing a high protein beverage, and he was struggling about the situation. By looking at his formula, we realized that he was using a high level of cocoa powder, and having in our portfolio CocoaNex with low level of heavy metal, we were able to work properly to reduce, and it was up to 50% of the cocoa powder for him to be able to reach the goal he needed to reach to be in the legislation from the country he was working with. So that was a big success for them and for us.
Okay, so this is something to look into for sure. Mark has talked about a few applications where the replacement was successful. Now I'm wondering, are there any applications in which you would not recommend the replacement with CocoaNex?
Yeah, there is the chocolate industry that will be probably more difficult, not because of the flavor or the ratio of replacement, but because of the labeling and the legislation. So, to keep that chocolate name, you're not allowed to use any other ingredients that the one defined by the regulation. So, for that reason, it will be more difficult.
I understand. This makes me think a bit further about ingredients. So I know there is other ingredient in CocoaNex besides carob. Why are they there and what is their functionality?
Yeah, CocoaNex took us years of R&D to set exactly the right replacement to for cocoa powder. So we had to use different ingredients, and this is a kind of a proprietary recipe for Nexus to combine those ingredients and working in synergy with the carob powder that we have in our recipe.
All right, and considering this mix of ingredients, when replacing the cocoa powder, also the label will change. What is your experience with this, and how should customers deal with it?
Yeah, definitely you will have to change your label because you're switching or you're adding in new ingredients to your cocoa powder. But what is great about that is the fact that there is very minimum ingredients, so the list will still be short, and the resonance of the other ingredients are all natural. So it is very well perceived by the client.
All right, so only good things I'm hearing. Finally, What is your advice in handling the replacement of cocoa with CocoaNex? What should food developers know about this?
I have to say, first of all, you have to keep in mind that it's not a straightforward one-to-one replacement. So you have to take it one step at a time and to start with very minimum replacement and to evaluate and to go up to that point of your client won't see any difference in between. And what would be important is that if you define at first that it will be a 30% replacement, we highly recommend our client to continue their R&D to be able to introduce months after, once the client will be used to that flavor profile or that new version of your product, go up to a 35, 40% and not them seeing any difference. And at any time, the strength of Nexxus would be when you're doing your trials, we're there to support you on your results if you have some difficulty or questions, because we have done a lot of applications here in our lab, and we're able to support and to help you to finalize your recipe.
Thank you, Julie, for answering all my questions. I definitely got the answers I wanted, and hopefully our audience as well.
That was my pleasure.
I hope you all enjoyed the discussion. We've heard some great tips here on how to use CocoaNex. And now I'm excited to move on to our live Q&A session. And we have Walter Bloom here, our commercial director at Want to Taste. And Walter is here to provide his expertise and answer all your questions. Thank you, Walter, for being here. We've already received some excellent questions. Our audience is a little bit shy today. Everything was in private chat, but let's dive right into it. And while we're doing this Q&A, feel free to keep sending your questions. We still have time. Let's start with the first one. Carob has a very distinctive sweet taste. What are the recommendations on balancing the added sweetness?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is very important to tell that, as Julia also mentioned, that it is not a straight one-on-one replacement of cocoa powder, because carob is different and has a distinct sweet and more caramel-like taste. So you always have to look at your total recipe, because if the rest of your ingredients are kind of neutral, for example, you will notice a difference much more quickly. Having said that, we have customers that have started replacing cocoa powder in their recipes and noticed, of course, there was a taste difference. But with another partner, we have created now a natural cacao extract, which is now being tested as we speak. And this is really to compensate for the taste difference that you have when adding a product like CocoaNex.
Okay, thank you, Walter, for clarifying this. Let's move on to the next question. Are there any specific instructions on how to use CocoaNex in chocolate fillings? Any recommended doses?
No. You should use it as you use normally your cocoa powder. And again, there it's always coming back to the question, okay, how does your recipe look? Okay, so how much milk powder is in it? How much other ingredients are in there? How much cocoa powder is in there? Basically, what we recommend is to start replacing at lower dosages, and then work your way up and see how it works for you in your specific recipe.
Okay, great. I can see that we were asked about the functionality, if it provides a similar smooth texture as chocolate, and if it's heat stable.
Well, it has a little bit of more rough structure than normal cocoa powder. So if you use it like in a chocolate bar, it will not work as well as, for example, when you use it in a chocolate filling, for example, or in a chocolate drink. So what we see now is like it works best in the lower to mid-end quality products, and not in the very high-end products where you only have like cocoa and cocoa butter, for example, and sugar. Another thing is, of course, if you want to use it in chocolate bars, in many countries or in most countries, you run into problems with legislation that you cannot call your product chocolate anymore. So in that sense, it is a bit less obvious to use it in those kind of applications.
Okay, so while we are here, we are also asked in terms of functionality, how is the solubility in hot water? Is it free flowing?
The solubility in hot water, it is good. So it behaves the same like cocoa powder. There is a special version for milk-based drinks that are treated UHT. Because if you try to dissolve CocoaNex in milk, then you get like little speckles, and therefore Nexxus has the CocoaNex 30, which is especially designed for this kind of applications where you get a very good product that dissolves and gets into a nice chocolate milk.
Okay, we're still on this topic. So can you share some experiences, applications in beverages like cream liquor or these chocolate drinks?
Yes, we can. So we are happy to send to anybody who shares their email address and has a specific question on a specific application, our experiences. It is very difficult for me now to share all the experiences we have.
Okay, we were also asked about the biscuit or cake recipe, so I assume maybe this goes into the same process, right? Like if
Yes.
you want more information on a specific application, let's get in touch after the webinar and we can definitely look into it.
Yes, but what I can say is, for example, we have very good experiences in people replacing cocoa powder in cake recipes, for example. And there they can go up to quite high exchange levels for the simple fact because that cake has, of course, a lot of other ingredients which give taste. And the same goes actually for biscuits and biscuit fillings. But again, everything depends on the recipe and what you want to achieve.
Okay. Someone was asking what ingredients are in the CocoaNex blend and what is the declaration?
Yeah, so the main ingredient of the CocoaNex blend is carrot powder, and then there is some rice syrup, rice flour, and sunflower oil. So those are basically the four ingredients in CocoaNex. And obviously, of course, you need to declare all these ingredients.
We were asked why is rice syrup solids in the formulation, or like why do you use it?
Well, I don't know the exact answer to that because the total formulation is proprietary to Nexxus. So we cannot reveal this information.
Okay. Moving to another question. What is the benefit of CocoaNex compared to other carob powder?
Yeah, well, so again, the recipe of CocoaNex with adding addition of the rice syrup and the flour and sunflower oil makes that the CocoaNex behaves a lot more similar to cocoa powder than when you just use carrot powder.
Okay, that was pretty short and clear. We were also asked, how does it work in protein powders? Is it working well in terms of flavor?
Yeah, in protein powders, it works very well. And again, in terms of the flavor, you really need to look at your total recipe Is there other flavors that you use? How far you can go. If you develop a new product, that's always the best, because then the consumer is not used to the taste of the existing product, of course. And when you want to replace or make an existing formulation cheaper, then we would say, okay, start at low exchange rates and work your way up.
Speaking of flavor, is masking necessary?
Yes. Well, I basically already asked or answered this question. It depends on your total recipe and how much of the cocoa powder you are replacing. Ergo, how much CocoaNex you add, and then depending on what you see in the change of the taste of your product, because carob is more sweet, more caramel-like taste. You can see, okay, do I need to add some, for example, natural cocoa extract, to get to my original flavor.
Okay, so next question is, does it have the same dispersibility, solubility to that of cocoa powder? And is the shelf life like for cocoa powder?
Well, again, I think we already also touched this subject. It is the same in the application when you use cocoa powder or CocoaNex, with the exception, of course, in drinks that contain fat like milk. There you need to have another version of the CocoaNex 30, which will give a good results in terms of solubility.
Do you have any more to add on the fat content, as you just mentioned CocoaNex 30, but someone is asking, how do you ensure the fat content is close to that of cocoa powder?
Well, basically, the fat content in CocoaNex is not that relevant, because if you look at the applications, there's usually a lot of fat coming from other sources in the recipe. So in general, the fat content in the CocoaNex really is not that relevant.
We were asked if we keep stock in Europe, what is the average lead time, and connected it with an earlier question, what is the price per kilo?
Yeah, so we keep stock in the Netherlands. We currently have the CocoaNex 20 on the stock. So if people want to order from our stock in Europe, the lead time will be a couple of days. Having said that, there are several versions of the CocoaNex available as well. So we have a light version, which is more light in terms of color than the medium. But we also have a dark and even a black version available, because there is also customers that need another color of the cocoa powder. In terms of the pricing, we have seen, unfortunately, also that the demand for carob powders has grown significantly, and therefore the pricing has gone up towards, if you compare it like to 4 or 5 months ago. Anybody who wants to receive a quote, we are happy to send a quote, because we will always look at the total volumes, the volumes per delivery, etc. So to give a quote right now is not the best idea.
Okay, and in your previous answer, you covered our next question about the different colors of CocoaNex. Okay, so is the declaration of black the same?
Yes. Maybe good for me to explain how the color differences come in the CocoaNex. Basically, what Nexxus is doing in the process is to give the carob powder a heat treatment. So, and to get a more dark color, the heat treatment will be more intense and therefore more roasted, so to say. So that also means that if you take a more dark version of the CocoaNex, the taste will also be a little bit different from the more lighter versions, because there will be a more roasted taste. But that is something you will see, of course, when you test the product yourself.
Thank you all for participating, and of course to Walter, who answered the questions.